All right. Is that Sprite?
Yeah, that's our sponsor tonight. So
Okay.
everyone,
Sprite.
if everyone looks under their seat, there is a Sprite there.
Wow.
We got
You
that
get a
taken care
Sprite.
of. You all
Yeah.
get Sprites, and
Wow.
they're normal, and feel free to drink them. There's nothing weird about them.
Did you ever see the Sprite commercial where they said Sprite was made with limen?
I was just thinking about that campaign and the
Yeah.
subliminal messaging campaign that
Mhm.
they ran.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know about that.
that shit rocked me when it came out. I must have been like 12.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if limens were real or not, you know? That's the
And
kind of thing
that's
where when you're a kid, it can really like trick you into thinking the world's a slightly more magical place than perhaps it is, except or at least magical in a different way. Like you think there are like Willy Wonka trees that have limens someplace.
I mean, there kind of are. You know that every citrus fruit comes from three uh, citrus fruits originally. They're all
But,
GMOs off of like the classic orange and then two other ones.
oh, that's interesting.
So there's something to the myth.
Yeah, sure. True. I mean, the ultimate genetic modification is cultivation, when
I
you think
think,
about it.
how about this? How about this one, Bill? The ultimate genetic modification is creativity.
Wild.
And it's like we don't even have to go through the rest of the talk.
The ultimate genetic modification is healing.
I feel like we're hitting on stuff too early, and
I know, we got to slow
people are
down.
gonna
We haven't even
not we're not gonna
started
be able to
yet.
cape it up, and
We
people
got
are
to,
gonna start
yeah, we
leaving
got
at
to keep,
7:05.
yeah. But you know what? This is like in the opening credits of a series when they drop all the clues that you only understand finally at the last episode, when
Yeah,
you're like, oh yeah, that's the murder weapon,
and I think the symposium audience is smart enough to be picking up on the foreshadowing that we're setting
Yeah,
up
I
here.
hope so. I hope so. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. My name is Bill Cartelopoulos. Today, you have joined us for what is the 419th meeting of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. And today we're very fortunate to have Julian Glander here with us, who I'll say a few words about in a minute. But before that, I always like to just say a couple of words about the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium for those who haven't joined us before. The New York Comics Story, boy, the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium was founded more than 10 years ago by Ben Ketchor, and it's kind of an outgrowth of the Occupy movement. At the time, there were efforts to try and figure out what an Occupy University might look like. It was a sort of loose project to try and take education out from behind the walled garden of academia and make it freely available to the public. And what that became for us essentially is a free weekly symposium dedicated to comics, visual narrative, and text image work. So basically, for every week during the academic year, we invite somebody, it could be an artist, it could be a scholar who works with this material, a historian, to come and present about their work. And that can take any form, and it has taken, I think, every form that you can imagine. Anyway, this has been an ongoing weekly project for more than 10 years now. As I said, this is our 419th meeting. So welcome. And as I said as well, series was founded by Ben Ketchor originally, and now Ben continues to co-curate the symposium. I'm also co-curating this year along with Austin English and Lily Carre, and we also have curatorial contributions from Danny Fingeroth as well. So there are a lot of people involved, basically doing volunteer work to keep this very, I think, interesting weekly symposium going. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Julian Glander. Julian is a 3D artist and animator. His debut feature film, Boys Go to Jupiter, recently premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Previously, he has helmed projects for Adult Swim, Disney, HBO Max, and Cartoon Network. He's also known for his cult hit video game Art School and his 3D illustrations, which appear frequently in the New York Times and New Yorker. And in 2022, Julian made waves as a contestant on Jeopardy when he recited the alphabet backwards. But what isn't in this bio, I should note as well, is that as a 3D illustrator, Julian's work also includes comics, including the book 3D Cuties that was published by Fantagraphics, and collects a bunch of work, which I believe was mostly, if not all, initially serialized at vice.com, which is where I first saw Julian's work. And I liked it so much that the work ended up appearing in the Best American Comics during the years when I was the series editor on that annual anthology series. So I was very, very pleased to include Julian's work in our comics anthology at that time. And I've been really, really just delighted to see all the different directions that Julian's work has gone in since then. I have to say that when I first encountered Julian's work, it was an interesting moment because it felt like, um, to me, digital comics were sort of becoming a thing, but it wasn't quite clear exactly what kind of thing and how they might be distinct from print comics. And with Julian's work, even though, the comics weren't like interactive in some way that wasn't adaptable to print formats, and the work was eventually collected in print, nevertheless, it really felt like something fresh and new when I first encountered it. Like this was somebody who was making work that really felt somehow digital native, like both not necessarily in the mentality of the person making it, but at least in the aesthetics of the work. Just very kind of obviously this is work that was made digitally and was being distributed digitally. Thematically, the work also dealt a lot with things like social media or being kind of absorbed on screens to the exclusion of all other things. But what I was also always really impressed by with Julian's work, and this translates across all media, is how he took digital graphics, I think using Blender initially and maybe still, and took this thing basically like computer graphics that we associate usually with projects like Pixar Studios, where you've got like hundreds of people in multiple studios, underpaid and overworked, cranking out these, giant, like kind of bloated commercial films. But he uses the digital tools as almost like in like the most DIY way possible, and he figured out how to use digital tools the same way you'd use just like a pencil. And that's something that always really impressed me about Julian's work, that and despite all, or through all the places that it's gone, it always has this kind of very like personal, like homemade, handcrafted kind of feeling to it. So it's something that's like designed to travel through the digital landscape, but it's a kind of voice that is not necessarily always well served by that landscape, or certainly it's not the kind of voice that dominates that landscape and is frequently presented to us. So I think Julian's work is very valuable for all those reasons and more. But that's enough from me. I'm now going to turn it over to Julian. And the one thing, and Julian can maybe explain this a little bit better, but while we always do welcome questions from the audience, and we will today, there's an added interactive element to this presentation. You, the audience, will be called upon to have an opinion, make your voice heard. Now that democracy is on the chopping block, your voice matters more than ever. So we need you to make your voice heard when Julian prompts you to participate in the presentation that he's cooked up for us today. So that's enough for me. I'm going to turn it over now to Julian Glander. Thank you, Julian.
Wow. Bill, what an intro. I I always love talking to you because you just get my brain spinning, and there's so many like side conversations I want to have now with you about, yeah, how much comics has changed since we kind of started talking in 2015. And And certainly thinking back to that moment about all the different promises that the internet had and all the different ways it could have gone versus where it has gone, which I think probably everyone here can agree is not good. And that's kind of a good segue into this talk, which is about all the different ways that your life can branch out and go in different directions. It's going to be a choose your own adventure style talk. I came, this is my second time at the symposium. I came here in 2019 and gave a very comics oriented talk. So I thought I would do something pretty different this time. So this is GTA 6 or Great Talented Artist, Visually Intriguing. I'm going to go ahead and hit the LFG button to get things started. This is my intro. I kind of feel like I don't need to do it because Bill already did it. I'm an illustrator and animator based in Pittsburgh. 3D artist, yakety 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 yak. Let's get to the rules. It's that's all you're going to hear about me. The rest of this talk is about you, the the Zoom participant. So like I said, this is going to be an interactive talk. We are going to live the life of an illustrator, a career artist, whatever you might want to call it. And together, all of us are going to vote to make choices. So when these options down at the bottom are presented, I'm going to need you guys to sound off in the chat and decide what we should do. Again, you can do that by typing in the chat. If you feel extremely strongly about something, do you think they should be allowed to turn on their microphones and speak? I kind of think yes. You're muted. Just you could just say no. It's a bad idea.
Well, what I was gonna say too is we do also have like emoji kind of stuff. So if people want to like, I think under React, people could do like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing, if
This
that
is
works.
we're all going to be prototyping this together. This is
Okay.
a talk that I have wanted to do for a long time, and this is really my first time trying it out. And we had talked about this earlier, but I think it's really the perfect place for it. So, with that said, it seems like everyone maybe has got it or have got it as best as they possibly could at this point. So I'm going to click got it.
I see one vote for got it and no votes
Okay,
for
good.
do it again. So we're good so far.
Did
But
you say
we got to we got to
10,000
get
votes
we
for
got to
got
get
it?
voter participation up, folks.
Yes. So what are we going to do with our life? Let's first be born. Okay. Just, and this is anyone who's familiar with video games, although there's a long section at the beginning where you don't really get that many choices. And we're going to just kind of breeze through this. But this is you as a baby. We're going to grow up. You were always very creative as a child. You drew on the walls of your childhood home. You told elaborate stories and entertained the other kids. Now you're going to continue growing. Congratulations. You graduated high school. Your guidance counselor seems to think you have an okay amount of creative potential. You have a couple options in front of you. And here's where we get to the first choice. And I think this one's going to be a real indicator of what kind of mood the audience is in. Should we go to college or should we become a cop? And go ahead and just sound off. We'll give it a couple seconds. Bill, what are people thinking?
I'm seeing a lot of college.
Oh,
Lucy
God.
really wants the cop but option, but that's the only we got a couple votes for cop. Everything else is
Okay.
college.
It seems like you guys want to go to college.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not surprised given the academic setting we're in, given the mood of the country right now. I think it may be the right choice to go to college. I do want to, oh, I was going to apologize for the emojis, but I think it's fine. I basically, it's placeholder. I thought I could do 1,000 images for this, and I kind of ran out the clock, and I've been working on the choices element of it. So that said, we're going to go to college. And from here, we have another branch. We can take out some loans and go to art school, and we can stay near home and go to community college.
We've got oh, okay. This seems like a very neck and neck one so far. Yes.
I'm gonna choose for you
Okay,
then.
we've got oh, okay, we've got I'd say 5 to 4 leaning towards art school.
Well, I think people want to go to art school, and I think it's It's a little more interesting. So let's do it. You go to art school. Pretty quickly, you learn there are two types of students: the teacher's pets and the rebels. What are we going to do? I'm seeing the audience is flooding this one with rebel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Parsons is just full of those people, isn't it? Okay. Your rebellious style earns you enemies and admirers in equal measure. A design magazine names you one of 25 under 25 to look out for. Through this article, a local design firm offers you an unpaid internship. And choices here are the same choices that every 19-year-old has. Do you take the internship, or do you stand with workers and say all labor should be paid? The exploitative reign of internships has gone on long enough. What's our chat saying? Oh, well, Bill has voted for internship.
Well, at that age, you might just end up doing nothing if you don't do something.
I wonder how many students we have here versus how many old heads like me. Okay. The internship has many challenges. On your first day, your overbearing creative director sends you on an errand to take out 1,000 pennies from the bank and put them in order by date. Again, we have a choice to stand up for ourselves or to go along with it. And I do think this basically happened to me on the first day of my first internship at an ad agency. And I'll tell you what I did after we get the votes in.
Well, most of the votes are go with the flow.
We got a lot of teachers' pets in here tonight. I think it's the right move. I used to my first job, I had to basically walk the creative director's dog and babysit his kids and move his car for alternate side parking 3 times a week. Okay. You take the assignment seriously, bogus as it is. As you're sorted pennies in the break room, numerous colleagues pass you by and make note of your usefulness. You spend your entire internship doing chores like this, but you pick up a lot of wisdom incidentally. This is going to take us back to college. In college, you eventually find your peers and your voice. Cool. Maybe it was all worth it. Still too early to tell. You meet Dougie. And all I'll say now is pay attention because Dougie's going to come back in a big way. Dougie's probably the most important character in this story. So don't think that I capitalized his name for no reason. So Dougie is in your same year, massively talented, and interested in a lot of the same things. During a group critique, Dougie presents his latest illustration project. It's pretty good, threateningly good. He's definitely on track to being the class superstar. So we've all been there. We've all been in the brutal uh, gladiator circle that is the group critique at art school. So are people wanting to compliment his project or rip it to shreds? What do we think of Bill?
Getting a lot of votes for compliment.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is what's most interesting about this talk is we have a crowd here that sort of seems to be developing a character of the good student, the good person, the rule follower. I think if we went over across town to Pratt, we'd be getting a lot of different answers because those kids they got a little bit more grit to them. You know, they're a little bit less sensitive over there on the other side of the river. All right, we'll compliment his project. You praise Dougie for his project. This is probably the best emoji in the whole game. This is you and Dougie as best friends. Okay, you've begun a lifelong friendship with Dougie. As you prepare for graduation, you keep hearing vague, unpleasant murmurs about the economy. And quite symbolically, you do not have a choice here. The economy is the economy. So here's what happens next. You're hearing vague murmurs that the economy is bad. You can power through, or you can get into crypto and AI. Yeah, I could have told you that we were going to power through on this one. However, I think we should just see what happens if we get into crypto and AI. Okay, you reach out to the worst person you know. He is trying to create a meme coin and needs someone to do the creative elements. You sketch out a meme character, Goody, for his pump and dump scheme. The plan is to make Goody go viral, then pump and dump the meme stock, ripping off other crypto morons and potentially making millions in the process. Are you in? We are getting a chance to back out here. I think people want to keep going with this one just to see what happens.
I
It's the night
see.
before your meme coin goes live. In the middle of the night, you are visited by a ghostly apparition. It's your future self. Don't do it. Don't make the wretched mistake. You only get one soul. Pretty serious stuff. Now, last chance to get out before it gets really crazy here. People want to go ahead with it. Oh, I warned you, but everyone was voting everyone was really wanting this to happen. So basically, you go to jail for 4 years for securities fraud. You take the fall for it. You're like the Hawk Tuah girl. You are behind bars for something that you honestly don't understand at all. That said, jail is honestly not that bad. They let you take art classes. It's kind of in this story. Bob Zakoriak is right. I did make you choose crypto, and I think there's probably a lesson here as well, which is whoever is in charge of the Zoom is in charge of everything. I'll let you guys choose from now on. I just really wanted to go down this path. Anyway, I'm imagining a Sing Sing style inspiring jail situation here where you actually become a better artist because of the adversity that you face in prison. So let's go ahead and have that, and time will pass here. Upon release, you really don't have a ton of opportunities available to you. Your peers have pretty much bailed on you. A friend of a friend offers you part time work as a dog walker. Do we take it or keep looking? Let's take it. So you're walking rich people's dogs. You work in the morning, and the rest of the day is yours. You actually usually leave work feeling pretty energized, and it's actually very inspiring. And I didn't mean to do this, but I did reveal earlier on that this was a big part of my first job. And so this is pretty autobiographical. One day, you recognize a customer. It's the famous illustrator Gubian Sanders. You've loved his work from afar for quite some time. So, should we say something to Gubian Sanders or should we mind our business? Let's say hi. Why not? You strike up a conversation. You tell him how much you love his work. It's effortless, but at the same time, there's a real depth of feeling. He's interested in the fact that you're an aspiring illustrator. He says he'd like to see your work. Do you give him your business card or do you tell him the portfolio still needs a little work? I see that many of you are reading ahead and answering before I'm done laying out the situation. And I just want to say that's fine and actually better. And again, I'll give kudos to this group for being a mix of great students and great participants. Okay, Gubian takes off. Perhaps nothing will come of this. Sometime later, you get an email from him. He says, I took a look at your portfolio. I want to introduce you to an art director at a company that makes high-end jigsaw puzzles. Your work would be perfect. So your first big client project is here. This is a big milestone. This is the thing that kind of closes that gap between leaving school and wondering if you're actually going to do this or not. The art director at Clixies, which is the high-end jigsaw puzzle company, can't wait to get started. You get on your first phone call with him. You don't know any of the lingo. He asks for a 3x3, and you don't know what that is. Do you want to ask him what a 3x3 is, or do you want to bluff? I think people already answered and I couldn't see it. Yeah, we got some bluffers here. I like it. My first client job, I didn't know what an invoice was. And I thought it meant that you called the company and left something in your voice to get paid. The guy told me on email, send us your invoice and we'll pay you. So I called the number at the bottom of his email and said, hi, I'm leaving my invoice. That was a hoot. We'll bluff. You bluff your way through the conversation, frantically taking notes on everything the client said. You type 3x3 into Google, the only result you get is 9. Basically, nobody knows what a 3x3 is. The client wants sketches by the end of the week. It's Tuesday. Now, this is a real professional illustrator problem. Do you start right away, or do you give it a couple days to marinate? We're going to go out into the world. Uh-oh. Once again, you guys have made a horrible choice. If I have to editorialize here, you got a little too inspired. You went out every night with your friends from college. You all celebrated. On Friday morning, in a hungover stupor, you scribble out some sketches. You know they're not your best work, but what are you going to do? You can't miss a deadline. Or can you? So, our options here, you have to either turn them in as they are or take the weekend, make them the best you can make them, and turn them in late. So, is it okay illustrations now or great illustrations past the deadline? And this one looks like we're really hit a fork in the road. It feels like people are really split here, Bill. What are you seeing?
Sorry. Yeah, it looks like kind of, I'm trying to see. There's one, two, one, two, one, one, two, two. I think it's just barely, just a hair is turn them in by a hair.
I see. And this is hard because I'm seeing over there, you're counting probably thousands of votes based on the way I'm seeing these come in. Like
Yes.
it could be,
Yeah,
so it could be 900,000 versus 880,000.
it could be.
And it's like any other election. It's about turnout. So let's turn them in. Hey, they're just sketches. The client just has to pick the sketch and then you can make it better later on. It's how you always did it in college. It's how the teachers let you do it. You send off the sketches, but you don't hear back that day. And that's probably totally normal. But again, you're at the beginning of your career. You really don't know what's normal yet. You're really leaning on these people to kind of set some standards for you. So, are we going to follow up with this person or are we just going to wait and see what happens? And it does look like people want to follow up. Your inbox is dead for a week. Finally, you get the email you were dreading. They're going in another direction. A burning hot illustrator named Dougie. This is a setback. You are trying to be happy for Dougie. He is your best friend, but this stings. And it's your first big job, and you screwed it up. So, what do we do here? Do we cordially congratulate Dougie, or do we go to a museum, get some inspiration, clear our heads, try to do a little reset? I'm seeing a split that's leaning a little bit towards museum.
Yeah, it's just about 50-50, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, we are going to the Museum of Fancy Art. I'm picturing something like the Met, where you could spend a whole day there. Um, it usually works for you. You go, you get inspiration. This time, you're standing in front of a big abstract painting, and guess who's there? It's freaking Dougie. Let's chat him up. Without prompting, Dougie starts complaining about Smello. So Smello is the hottest new social media app. And it's a new breakthrough where you can add smells to your social media posts. And again, Bill, in 2015, people were talking about this. You'd go on Creators Project and they'd say the next big thing is going to be a app that you can stick your finger in and it'll feel like jelly. This is something that
I
hasn't
vaguely
come to
remember that. I
pass.
do vaguely remember that.
Yeah. The jelly one, we all vaguely remember that one. But anyway, in our world that we're in today, through the magic of games, the hottest thing is Smello. And a lot of illustrators are getting into it. They're dipping their toes into what they're calling smellustration. Um, you have the old fogies of illustration who are up in arms about it. And it's really what we've been talking about all day. First, they made us go digital. Then they made us add animation to our drawings. Now this. So it's really up to you which road you want to go down. And this is a philosophical decision. Do you get into smellustration or do you try to wait out the fad? Mm-hmm. 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 The votes are coming in. We're not gonna go down this road. And well, we'll see. We'll see what happens if we wait it out. You can't hop on every trend that comes your way. And this chair represents sitting it out. The app Smello is shut down by Congress for harvesting people's smell data without their approval. And I think we've learned something here from our previous experience in prison. We've learned that if you have a bad feeling about something, just because somebody's dangling something in front of you, you could be the person that goes down for it. So I think our voting audience here is reacting maybe a little too much to some previous trauma. That said, some time has passed. After an email dry spell, two potential clients reach out. There's an ad agency that wants you to do some smell illustrations for a high profile brand. And then there's Squid Ink Magazine, your favorite magazine, who wants some cheap and quick editorial drawings. Now, whose email do we respond to first, the mystery client or Squid Magazine? At first, it looked to me like the mystery client was getting it, but we've got a late break for
A lot
Squid
of, yeah, there's
here.
been a late burst for the late turnout for this. The late turnout
And
voters are all Squid Ink
And
voters.
this is why you don't call it at 7 p.m.
That's right.
This is why you wait until you get all precincts recording. So we're going to go
Yeah.
to Squid Magazine. The art director at Squid Magazine wants you to do something that's totally out of your wheelhouse. In terms of style and subject matter, it's basically the opposite of what you like to do. Now, again, we can bail or we can give it a shot. This is one of those ones where I don't feel like you guys are going to want to bail on this. I think you're going to want to give it a shot. And this is something that I think every maybe 22, 23-year-old illustrator, you may get the call that you have to draw a horse for the first time. You may get the call that you have to draw a car for the first time and you really don't want to. You may get 100 emails in a row from the New York Times that every article is about AI now. So every illustration you do is about a robot cooking a turkey or painting a painting or riding roller skates. So we're going to give it a shot. The illustrations come out good, but not great. We saw this before with the puzzle company, where it's just like something's happening with you guys where you crack under the pressure. The art director knows you did your best. You went through a lot of revisions and you did get published. And along the way, you learned a new pencil technique. And let's say you maybe will be incorporating that going forward. So now you've got a little time. You can work on a personal project or you can go on vacation. Mm-hmm. Recession indicator. Nobody wants to go on vacation. You work on a personal project. So you post it to social media or just share it with a couple friends. We're just going to keep it in the friend circle. Fine with me. Something has clicked. Your friends start passing it around without you even doing anything. People start responding to your work. This is like the personal project that finally unlocked your shit. You get a big social media following, you land some clients. From the outside, this looks like an overnight success, but you did put a lot of work in. And it all culminates with an award from the Illustration Society. And I think we all know about the Illustration Society. It's a very old school cigar smoking, martini drinking group. They have a building in one of the nicer neighborhoods of town, and people go and they wear suits for the ceremony. And I think we all want to attend. So you've won a platinum medal, and there's a big award ceremony. It's time to give a speech. You have a lot of people you want to thank, but also this is your moment. The big shots are here. Rates and working conditions for illustrators have gotten worse and worse. This could be your time to say something. So, do you want to give a very sentimental, grateful speech, or do you want to kind of scold the illustration community and tell them that we need to step up and start advocating for ourselves? What do we? We're getting a split here again, Bill.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think some people want to do both, but you have to make a choice.
And that's
Uh,
because if you go too long, they'll play you off. They'll get the
Yeah.
violins out and
I mean, I think it's leaning. I'm not sure. I mean, it looks almost 50-50. We have I think we have more thank than scold, just by a hair.
all right,
But it's a pretty
okay,
split. It's a very split decision.
okay, we'll thank.
It's within the margin of error.
And we may end up going back and doing a recount on that one. And again, I know what they'd do if we had this talk over at RISD. That's all I'm saying. Okay. You thank your parents, your teachers, your friends, those early clients, the bloggers, the fans. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I'm not going to say I knew this was coming, but you are losing the crowd. It is a boring speech. They pull you off the stage with the oversized cane. Who cares? It's your special night. A number of fresh faced 22-year-olds come up to you and say, "You're the reason I got into smell illustration. You're a legend." Jeez, remember when you were 22? Seems like only a couple minutes ago. Now, I hate to say it, but again, we have an unavoidable click here. We are entering the slump. You've hit a mid career slump. The world has changed. You lost your competitive edge. There's a new thing beyond smell illustration. It's like holograms or something. And there's also like a TikTok element to it. So you're at this moment, you're not sure you have it in you to reset your mind, learn the craft again, start all over. You were making good but not great money. You still have bills to pay, you still have health insurance, and you are not loving the work anymore. It's become a mid-career slog. So, do we take psychedelic drugs or do we get a full-time job? I think I saw some votes coming in, but yeah, okay. Okay. People seem to be voting for drugs on this one. We have entered the psychedelic section of the talk. And this is where I think if we were doing this in person, it could be really fun because we could get the fog machine on, we could get some strobe lights going. I'm picturing, sitar music maybe. That said, yeah, oh well, it's working. Okay. This is where you'd all put on your 3D goggles and things are gonna get really weird. You are visited by a hallucination of yourself as a baby. The baby wants to know how it's going. Where have you been? What have you seen? What have you done? Are you happy? Do you scream or do you embrace the baby? We have a wholesome crowd here.
I think a lot of us have been to therapy, Julian, so we want to embrace the baby.
And this is so valuable because as I'm prototyping, I'm making a mental note here to to do something to counter against this because everyone is choosing the sensible choice every time. And you know what? In real life, it's you don't always have a sensible choice. What the heck was in that mix? You wake up in a daze and check your watch. It's Tuesday in May of 2074. Where did time go? I'll tell you where. Life passed. The years went by a lot quicker than you imagined. Behind you is a huge body of work, friendships, relationships, memories. In front of you, it's your 50-year class reunion from art school. And this is a choice. Do we go to the class reunion or do we sit it out? You guys want to go to the class reunion? Okay. Okay, we'll go. You pull up to your 50-year class reunion from college. Everyone's older and you have pretty much fallen out of touch. Someone got married and had kids. Someone founded a tech company and made huge piles of money. Somebody has published 50 children's books. None of them super big hits, but I think it's been nice. It's all a little surprising, and at the same time, it feels inevitable. You see Dougie alone at the catering table. Wow, that's a name you haven't heard in years. Now, I don't know. It's been so long. Talk about therapy. You worked through a lot to get Dougie out of your mind. You had to really make a name for yourself away from Dougie and not have him on your shoulder. So I don't know. Are you healed enough to approach him? Or is the hurt inner child inside of you saying, let's leave Dougie alone. You know, the wound after all these years is still maybe a little too fresh. I think people want to approach Dougie. Dougie is really happy to see you. He goes, wow, you know, I was always pretty envious of you. It seemed like you had everything so put together. You guys have that great moment of closure you always needed. Were you actually friends, rivals, or something in the middle? Dougie was part of your journey and you were part of his. Maybe you can get coffee next week and talk more. Sure. Yeah, that'll happen. The reunion soiree is winding down. You spent so long with Dougie, you didn't really get to chat with anyone else. I should also say, if you guys had gone down the road of the mystery client, we would have spent a lot more time with Dougie. Okay, the reunion's winding down. It's a rainy summer night, but the kind where you don't really need an umbrella. You walk the familiar scenes of your old campus. You look into a classroom and see a freshman burning the midnight oil with a stack of drawings, just like you used to do. The drawings are beautiful. They're perfect. Through 50 years of changes, this student is just ripping them out, pen and pencil on paper, just like you used to do. And they're fantastic. And you have to think, how can time just keep moving like this? How can every year there be a new crop of these beautiful minded, enthusiastic, willing students willing to start their lives? It's like Normandy. It's like just students coming over and over out into the world wanting to be illustrators. Are you crying? Or is it just rain dripping down your face? Every decision you made, every sacrifice, every choice, every road you went down brought you to this exact moment. Now, you're looking through a window here. Do you tap on the window, let yourself into the classroom, talk to the student, or do you stay out of it? Does this, is your advice going to mean anything? Is your wisdom going to mean anything? You know, it seems like you guys want to give them some words of wisdom. Oh no. Before you can do anything, you are struck by lightning. Somehow, you kind of always knew that that's how it was going to go for you. The lightning zips through your body, and it's an energizing, powerful, natural force. It's kind of what you always thought you'd get out of a great idea or a great project or something. It's just, it burns you up and you are dead. You leave behind your body of work and you leave behind the people, obviously, in your life. But over time, it all fades. Your works on paper shrivel and decompose. The digital ones are kept on those lacy, rugged hard drives, and they're great. You can drop them, but they don't last forever. So even your digital works do decompose. It was always going to end here. In your final moments, you remember your life like a movie, like it happened to someone else, but it happened to you. You will never really know if you made all the right choices or if there's even such a thing as right choices. So for this person, for this life that we've run through together, it's all over. For you, dear audience member, you still have a number of options in front of you. So what are you going to do with your life? Draw your own conclusions. Thank you. I'm Gooby and Sanders. This has been my New York Comics Picture-making Symposium presentation.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was really, really great.
How did we do time-wise? It's
We're doing great. Yeah,
7:46.
we've got
Okay.
some time left. We can but I wanted to ask you a few questions about this. First of all, I think we probably missed some exciting narrative detours because we have some people, we have a very wise audience, who made
I
wise
think
choices.
too wise. Yeah.
What were some of the exciting detours that this blobby character might have encountered?
I'm not going to tell you because if I have a feeling there's somebody watching here who teaches at some other school, and
Hmm.
I'd like to come do it over and over.
Yeah, well, that
So
was my other thought too, actually, that it would be interesting to do it with students as well. More so than with people who have worked in the field or in related fields for a long time. But what's interesting about this presentation is that it really does, you know, f- face it does kind of, and I'm assuming this is maybe in part what motivated you to put it together, but it really does collect, I think, a lot of the tough or ambiguous kinds of choices that young artists have to make. What were there any kind of like you know things that you pursued that kind of like the meme coin design or whatever that you realized were not the kind of thing that you wanted
yeah,
to
I
do?
mean, I think, I studied advertising in school, and I came out of school in the Obama era with a much peppier view of capitalism. And I had this, it was pitched to us that commerce and creativity could work together, and that you could do, an animation project for GE, and that it would somehow be subversive, or that somehow these big companies that were making, green initiatives or whatever, were actually doing that in sincerity. Yeah, I think GE is probably the one that I'm most kind of embarrassed by. I did a bunch of gifts for them when I was like 23. Um, and then, but yeah, I mean, it's like it's been a big turning point in my career. I used to think it was really cool to land a big evil client, and I look back and I wasn't even making that much money. I mean, they must have been laughing at the fucking offices of some of these companies when I was like so willing to do illustrations for them.
Well, I think also one thing that's changed, yeah, and I think what you're talking about is the pay rate is a huge thing too, because I think, sometimes you read about creative people from previous decades, and they might do a few corporate jobs, and then that would give them enough money that they could then work on the personal projects or take, more low-paying gigs for Ink Squid magazine or
Yeah.
whatever, just kind of cruising on a few big money gigs every year. Whereas now even the big sellout gigs don't really pay that much.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it was even, it was working that way for me for a little while.
mhm,
But
mhm.
it's all falling apart. So
Yeah.
this is not a talk that has any easy answers on that stuff,
Well,
because
yeah,
you
and
have,
and I think for those of us who teach, that's connected as well, not just to the experience that artists, working artists have, but also I think that question that you sort of suggested towards the end of your talk, which is like, what do you tell all of these kinds of graduating classes of students, like who year after year, that are trying to get into a field that even like, pretty established professionals still kind of struggle to, we're even really established people still kind of struggle just to hang in there and sort of, like maintain. So yeah, do you do any teaching or interact with young illustrators yourself?
Um, no, I mean, other than going and doing visiting lectures and like taking on the occasional mentee, I
Hmm.
really, for those exact reasons, I really don't feel qualified to do it.
Hmm.
Every time I come close to taking a semester teaching job somewhere, I really get into a panic where I'm like, how can I like talk myself up into encouraging these kids? And especially, how can I do it on behalf of these schools, which I'm
Hmm.
so, especially with some of these private schools, I'm so suspicious of them.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to, I'm trying to spin this back in a more positive direction, because I do think overall, being a young illustrator or making a career in the arts, a lot of it is that the name of the game is endurance. And
Hmm.
the big challenge, besides the specific, do I go down this road or the other? The big long term challenge is like, it's like carrying the Olympic torch. Like, it's an endurance thing where you have to just keep the light on. And the people who win in illustration are the people who just don't get extinguished and
Hmm.
find whatever their source of motivation is. And I've been having these talks with a lot of people over the last few years, and there's a lot of different sources of motivation that people have beyond getting the medal from the illustration society, as it's called in the talk.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, the recognition is good, and but it's also like I think often, whether it's articulated or not, any kind of recognition is understood as being valuable just because it puts you on more art directors' radars, So it's just kind of like a career boost, I mean, because there are a lot of people who are making good work but don't necessarily get the medals or whatever. But yeah, I think there's a lot that I think one of the key things though that you just said is that idea of personal motivation, like what is the personal motivation? And I assume that it was kind of an intentional thing in this kind of beta testing of GTA 4 it was or 6 or whatever visually intelligent or whatever GTA 6 uh, that doing the personal project it was an important step towards um, kind of getting to where maybe someone might want to be as an illustrator or professional artist because I think if because I think that's runs counter to one of the other themes of the presentation, which is just like the constant succession of like shiny new objects. And certainly, well, and you're in an interesting position yourself because you do work with technology in a way that maybe like older traditional illustrators might feel alienated by, but at the same time, you're not chasing every other thing that comes along. So, it's not a question of technology or not technology, but it's rather the question of like if you keep trying to bend yourself into a different kind of shape to suit whatever the circumstances, you don't know what shape you actually assume anymore.
That is a really brilliant way to put it. Yeah, because the metaphor here that we ran through is, I started my illustration career doing GIFs, and it was at a time like I don't know if 2012 or 2013 when like the established illustrators would just bitch and moan all day on Twitter about not wanting to do them.
Mhm.
And I think like if you're a young person, like that's probably the thing to be looking for is like the thing that people are complaining about as
Mhm.
like the thing that we're all going to actually eventually have to be doing. The
Mhm.
one now that it is probably like we all have to be characters on TikTok.
Mhm.
You have to not just do illustration or do art. You also have to be like dressed like an artist in a beautiful space that people want an artist to
Mhm.
have, being hot, having morning routines, and documenting it as the next layer, and that's become kind of a mandatory. And yeah, that's one where it's like I feel like that's what makes me feel like I'm phasing out of it because it's a
Mhm.
mandatory that I just don't have the energy to keep up with.
Mhm.
But then you said something else that I wanted to comment on. Oh, just to go back to personal projects. Yeah, I think as a working artist, you're in control of about 10% of your life, you know um when you work and what you draw and how much you get paid for it and how successful it is basically in the hands of this mysterious composite of a person that we call the art director.
Mhm.
It's like we all kind of always have this person over our shoulders, like it's like God. It's like what's going to satisfy the art director, whether it's an actual art director you're working with or a potential art director that might be lurking on your Instagram. That's the person who really controls this, the puppet master behind most of your life. And the projects that you do that you self initiate are the one place where you can really steer your life in different directions by a few degrees at a time. They're the place where
Mhm.
you can really put logs on the fire. And they're also the thing that it's always the thing that really takes off and makes people famous.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it often is the thing that you do for yourself that because it just has more richness, because you're putting your actual like personhood and humanity into it, it's coming from your experiences and it's not based on what somebody else wants. Like only you know what you want. And everything else is like a triangulation trying to please someone else. And I also think too, the thing is like for me, I always think that if you're any kind of independent creative worker, ultimately the goal is for there to be as little distance between the personal project and what you're doing professionally as possible. So, everything you do has to be like steps towards that, So, even like in the example of like the Squid Ink magazine, it's
Mhm.
like, well, maybe they don't pay so much, but that could be a venue where you can actually do things that you like. But anyway, you had your finger up before.
Well, I think generally you are right. I think that's the sensible approach to a creative career, or it's the approach that makes them, it's certainly the approach that I've followed, is closing that gap. And what that often means is doing a personal project like a short film and then basically doing the exact same thing one more time for a client and
Hmm.
then rinsing and repeating. But again, like last couple years, I've really and living out here in Pittsburgh, I've been talking to a lot of people who I would consider working class artists who do things a different way that's very new to me. I think very new to anyone who went to a private college. But I have a really good friend who works all day as a carpenter, and then he has not a it's not a thriving art business, but it's an art practice where he has solo shows once a year. He gets to make the work exactly how he wants it because he's completely untethered it from his financial commitments.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people like that in Pittsburgh. Nate Dye, who worked on my movie with me, is a great animator, and he also runs a house cleaning company. So
Hmm.
for 20 hours a week, he's dispatching people to clean houses, and then for the rest of the week, he's free. I met a guy the other day who's a house painter, and again, each of these jobs, they're very much working people's jobs, and they
Hmm.
also come with some really huge creative benefits, whether it's access to tools, access to people's homes that are interesting and inspiring, and people who say
Hmm.
interesting things, or just access to a different perspective than somebody who went to, say, a certain school in Rhode Island.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And that's a great point because I think that is the other model where it's just to kind of like take the economic pressure off of your creative work and do something else. And also too, I think, I think there are a lot of benefits to art, even if it's just like volunteering on the side or whatever, like, and not, running a cleaning company or something, whatever it is. But there's a lot of benefit to doing that kind of stuff because in theory, and this is something we forget, I think, a lot, just because there's so much pressure to please, whether it's a handful of agents and a handful of art directors and a handful of editors and a handful of whatever, who are the primary like gatekeepers, in your field. But in theory, if you're making like art or creative work, in theory, you want it to be for people. And it's like, it's good to be in touch with people, who are like for outside of that niche area. Like those are the specialists and they have a valuable perspective. And that's also the source of your income potentially, but it's all not everything. And I think too, like you can understand that there are other ways that art can get into the world than just the client work or whatever. I mean, it can even be like, painting a mural on the side of a cafe in your town or whatever, and then that's something that actually like people experience every day. And it's not just like dressing up a page in like a business magazine or something like that too. Um, so I think there's a lot more we could say about this, but I also want to open it up to the audience. Does anyone want to ask any questions of Julian while he's here? And Julian, maybe we don't need to share the
I think I can get out of
screen.
the screen share.
Yeah,
That's a good
yeah, yeah, that's
idea.
fine.
Okay.
But does anybody want to ask any questions, either just about, the kinds of stuff we've been talking about, which is to say, career path of an illustrator, the kinds of choices a young artist has to make, or alternatively, we got a lot of people here who I'm sure are just fans of your work. Maybe they got to see boys go to Jupiter, they've read the comics, they played art school, whatever, any or all of the above. If anybody just wants to ask you questions, Don Grattan is asking what your work was for Apple, what you did for the Apple Corp.
Oh, because I mentioned it in my intro. I actually am realizing I shouldn't have said that because it's under NDA. It was just an illustration for the App Store about 5 years ago, but it's just enough to get it, just enough to get the name in there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Any other audience questions here? Anyone else? I do want to I do want to ask a question about your film, because I'm kind of, as I was saying before, one of the things that, always impressed me about your work is that it has almost like, it seems like something that can like move through the entire media landscape, but it also has this kind of like, homemade, like DIY kind of vibe to it. And it just feels like you found a way to use those kind of tools that often make impersonal work to develop a personal style. I am kind of wondering, and I know you've done like short films, for example, like short animations for like Adult Swim and things like that. And even there, I'm sure there was some amount of collaboration. Maybe, I don't know if, maybe even if it's just getting friends to do voices or whatever it is. Um, but but the film is a much bigger project. It's a feature length film. It has the same aesthetic as your work, but I know there are other collaborators. There's a very distinct segment that's designed by Robert Beatty, whose work is also great, who I remember as Beef Strong on social media. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the experience of doing something as big and expansive as a feature film
Yeah.
and how different that production process was from just like doing stuff on your computer at home.
I think thinking about it in the context of what we've been talking about, I think like the thing that really animates me most, or it is the thing that can kind of keeps me moving through life, is just having to do new things and having to and trying to do things where there's like a an element of danger, I guess, like, or an element of colossal failure. Uh,
Mhm.
this was a big jump. The longest piece of animation I had done previously was 10 minutes, and Boys Go to Jupiter is 90 minutes.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess it's like a lot of what I was thinking about philosophically before I even started writing the movie was I would go to festivals and I would see like the most beautiful, interesting animated short films. Like I
Mhm.
would see animated short films that were so personal, had really sunk their teeth into a special style, felt like only one person could have made them. And I wasn't seeing that with animated features. I'm seeing Pixar only, basically.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this has just been something that I've had conversations with about for a decade of there has to be some way in the middle. There has
Mhm.
to be, it has to be true that if you can do a 10-minute animation, you can do that 9 times in a row and make a
Mhm.
feature film. And I think that was the delusion that got me started on the production side of things was
Mhm.
just it was just that I could that I was curious to what would happen if I gave it a try. And then in terms of how it was different, um it was just harder in every way. I mean, is all I could really say. It's like I think the biggest thing talking about being a digital artist, one of the big challenges was saying goodbye to the daily dopamine hits of waking up, working for 2 hours on a comic or a GIF, and then having
Mhm.
that on Instagram the same day. You know, when I was writing comics for Vice, I'd write them on Sunday night and they'd come out on Tuesday. And that was like a long time for me to wait at the time. You know, I'd spend all
Mhm.
Monday being like, what are people going to think of my comic?
Mhm.
So to reset my brain and say, I'm gonna hold off on getting Instagram likes or Tumblr likes or whatever for 3 years was like, I don't want to be dramatic, but it was like something I had to really detox on because
Mhm.
I had scrambled my brain. Like I had given my whole life to my phone and to these apps, and like I was really looking back as I turned 30 and being like, all those nights, all those times I stayed up like 4 days in a row, took caffeine pills from the dollar store, and stayed up and let my teeth rot out of my head and got sick and neglected my relationships. All those times I did that, and it was for like a little fucking pink blob. It was for like some little thing I had done for Tumblr that so wasn't worth it. So I don't know. I was really trying to do something a little more sustainable with this movie, and the thing that actually got it done was not working crazy hours, which you would think would be the case. You would think to make a feature film in a couple years, you'd have to go 24/7 on it. But I
You
actually
can't,
found
you can't go 24/7 for a couple years.
that's exactly right. Exactly. You can go for 24 hours or so. And yeah. And so really it was like, it was cool. I had 8-hour days. I took a day off every week. And I had done the stuff that I thought was dorky in the past, like make a calendar and set goals for myself, and also bring other people into it, which I honestly had just been scared of doing.
hmm hmm Yeah, and I just realized I said Robert Beatty instead of Jordan Spear. I mainly remember people's like names on Tumblr than their
Who's
actual.
Robert Beatty?
He did that book Floodgate Companion, I think. It was I think he did the cover of Kramer's Ergot 8. Anyway, like digital artist. We'll
But
shoot
you did say,
him
yeah, I
links.
know his work, but you did say
Yeah,
Beef Strong, and
yeah.
so I think it's all okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordan was the first, he was the person whose work got me thinking about being a 3D artist. He was the person who, when I saw it, I was like, I think I have to give this a try.
Mhm,
And I was just basically at the beginning, I was just copying him.
mhm,
Like I was doing stuff that was very derivative of him in terms of the style and the colors and the subject matter. And he was really cool and supportive about it.
mhm,
He was very welcoming he was like, welcome to this community, welcome to 3D modeling. And he'd become a really good friend. And so I wanted to honor him by having him animate about 15 seconds of the movie in his style.
mhm, mhm. No, it looked cool, and it was like a really good like insert, because it made sense within the
And
world.
in theaters, the beef strong heads go crazy for that one.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know,
mhm. Yeah, they throw Chef Boyardee at the screen. Steven Suze asks, as far as the writing, did you decide to make a feature and go from there, or was this a pre-existing idea that you thought was best suited for a feature?
it kind of started as something else, I think. It's a story about a teenage boy living in Florida who's working as a delivery driver. And I always kind of thought that the Uber Eats driver was just like a really fun, wide open, like mechanic. Like I thought that I always knew I wanted to do something with deliveries, whether it was a video game, which I think is the most natural and obvious thing to do, or a
Mm,
TV series where it's like you have a delivery driver who meets a new kooky person every week. So it did start out as vignettes. Um, yeah, I was thinking a lot about delivery drivers, and that's where it started, especially during the pandemic when some kind of new rituals around ordering food evolved.
mhm,
And I don't know. That was kind of the beginning of it. Was Uber Eats was me like feeling like a weird freak in 2020, where I would order something and then like a person would come and drop it off in a bag. There was no
mhm.
contact. You open the
Yeah.
door and like scuttle your food out like a
Mhm,
freak.
mhm.
And it's humiliating for everyone. It's humiliating for the driver and it's humiliating for you. And the food is always cold and nasty and like $30 for a burger.
Christina asks, what has been your favorite project to date?
And that's going to be Christina Lee, another Pittsburgh homie who's has left town for New York, perhaps temporarily. Perhaps we can call her back here. What's my favorite project to date? I think the one that popped into my head was a collaboration I did with my wife a few years ago. Um, we made a zine together based on a receipt that we found in the parking lot of our grocery store, Shop and Save. We just found a random person's receipt, and we kind of we worked on the zine where we kind of imagined this person's life based on what they were buying. And she was I never did my half of it. Like we had a meeting about it. We kind of planned it out. She did the work for her pieces of it. And then many months went by, maybe years, and I like didn't do my part. I kept just saying I can't get into it right now. And then a publisher called Dale Zine reached out to me from Miami, or maybe it's Dale Zine. And I surprised my wife by finishing the magazine and getting it published. And so one day she got a package in the mail with 50 copies of it. And yeah, I think making something for someone and anticipating the moment of somebody seeing your work for the first time, however it is, whether it's on Instagram or in the theater or in a little card that you write someone, is like is like we've been saying all day. It's the core thing. It's like it is for people. So that's a project that just came into my head. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's kind of a little bit more of a fun story than the usual idea, and I went on the fucking computer.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how something comes to life when you add an element of like either like being generous to people or helping or giving or something, and or sharing, I mean, when that thing is involved with art making, it definitely like makes it feel really alive and juicy, and it's something that's actually like improving your experience as a human on the
The
big.
juiciness is what's not getting talked about enough.
Hmm.
And that's what I think we should all be looking for, is the juice factor.
Hmm. That's
And
true.
again, a big thank you to Sprite.
That's right. That's true. I'm trying to remember like there was some brand like where like I mean they would like there would be like commercials for things that were basically just like candy, but they'd make it like gushers, like it's bursting with juice,
The gushers where you would the commercials where they eat the gushers and their heads turn into the fruit.
Yeah,
Obviously a massive influence on me, because I thought
interesting.
that, first of all, I thought it was real. I
Hmm.
thought that somehow that was really happening. I understood that it wasn't going to happen every time you ate a gusher, but I thought it was real.
It could even turn into a Lyman. Think about that.
Oh, we're back. And I
Back to
love
Sprite,
how you've
Sprite,
gone full
Sprite
circle with the
Gushers
Lyman.
collab.
And
Yeah.
that's, you know what, that's a treat for people who got here on time.
Yeah, it's
That's
all
a
about
treat
the
for
it's always the callbacks that just kind of make it all tie it all together. It makes it feel like there's closure even if there's
makes you
not.
feel like we're not just a Zoom chat here, we're a family.
We're
This is
we're
like
we're
this
actually
is like
something's
Cheers
happening
or
here.
something.
Something's
No one's
happening
allowed to
to
leave
us. Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, we're going to be changed and have a little bit of a hard time communicating with other people at the end of this
Yeah.
session. Does anyone else want to ask a question? I don't see any others in the chat, but maybe if anybody wants to type a question or raise a hand, you can raise a virtual hand using the various reaction features that we have here on Zoom. Any other questions for Julian while we're here? What I'll ask you in the meantime is like, going back to the movie, one thing I'm kind of wondering is like, um, was there a point, one of the things about the film is that it has been touring festivals and you do have like some name people in the cast, like, Tavi Gevinson and so on. I don't remember who the other cast members were. I'm sure you could tell us more about who's in it, but I remember it was like a lot of like known people were in the cast. Was there like a certain moment where it felt like okay, this is like leveling up in some way where I have to like be like very together to kind of like deal with these like money people who are going to give me the cash to get the voice actors or finish the film or whatever, and then
Yeah.
therefore be in a good position to maybe get into the film festivals to possibly get.
Well, it happened in kind of a different way than maybe you're imagining,
Okay.
because there basically, in terms of financing, there really was none. Um, it was, I could say, it's self-financed, but the amount of money that we actually spent was like quite measly. So we never really did that fundraising step. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the moment when I started pulling the cast in was when it was the snowball moment where it was like, this has gone from a first draft script to something that I have to commit to. Tavi was, I think, probably the first person I asked to do it. She plays a worm in the movie, and I had known her I actually met her through Adam J.K., the Instagram self-help artist. Um, but I think I messaged her on Instagram along with Joe Pera and Elsie Fisher and Julio Torres, and said, "Will you take a look at the script I'm working on? I want you to do a voice in it." And that was probably like the most stressful thing I've ever done for no reason. Like, it was something where it's like, when like you text someone and then you like throw your phone away, like you can't even, like, you're so nervous to do it. Um and really, I kind of felt like, well, if all four of these people read it and are not like interested, then I have a dud on my hands and this isn't worth doing. Um and then, yeah, we got a great cast. Janine Garofalo is in the movie, who Chris Fleming. I mean, it's a phenomenal cast of 15 like big comedy all-stars, and we recorded the parts in July of 2023, right before the strike, And then it was like, I have to do this. Like, I have 90 minutes of just fantastic comedy performances and I have to honor them. And so I owe it all to the cast for coming in and being generous with their time and making the movie happen.
Hmm.
And that's another thing is, I've put out a lot of projects, but in in my lacy rugged hard drives, there's a lot of stuff that I have abandoned, a lot of ideas that I at one point was really excited about, but then I lost the steam on them.
Hmm.
And in the same way the zine that I do with my wife, when you bring other people in, things can go a lot of different ways, but often what can happen is you can create a sort of energy cycle where somebody's always pushing it forward and where there's a sense of accountability, and that can really lead to projects getting done.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because someone else can maybe like carry, it's someone else is still moving forward even when you feel like you might just be potentially about to drop it maybe, or you're just losing your focus or something like that. No, that's really great perspective. And I just want to ask one other quick, just kind of practical question as a follow-up. Did they record the entire film almost like a radio play before you finished animating it?
Yeah, that's exactly how we were talking about it, where we were like, can we write this like it is a radio play, and can we make it like funny enough as a radio play that the animation can just be on top of it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, basically, like everyone came into the booth for like really quick sessions.
Mhm.
Tavi was in the booth for an hour for her part, and that was like pretty typical. And people improved a lot,
Mhm.
and Jack Corbett, who plays the main character, our Gen Z Zoom members probably know him from the NPR Planet Money TikToks, but he had a massive influence on the script. A lot of it is about economics, and his way of thinking about it really kind of changed the movie. I just love him.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, Christina Lee has a two-part question. First of all, Reese wants to know, how did you get Chris Fleming? And Christina wants to know, how would you compare your comic making process to your animation process? So let's start with Chris Fleming, who I do remember encountering first with a music video about not being polyamorous. I think that was the
Yes,
Chris
yes.
Fleming thing that I saw.
I had first seen his work about the same time. He's a great comedian. I think probably everyone watching, if they don't know him by name, they've seen his videos,
Mhm.
at some point. I was just an admirer, and I had a mutual friend, the artist named Shayna Stripe, who was very close with him. And I had actually wanted to work with him previously on the show Summer Camp Island. I was doing kind of a special episode for them where it was separate from the rest of the production of the show. And I messaged Julia Pott and said I wanted to have Chris Fleming do his voice, and she texted me back and said Fleming is mine. She had already claimed him for another part. So I'd been waiting for like 4 years to work with him, and he's brilliant. I mean, he came in and he was like a freak of nature in the booth. His TikTok videos are very high energy. He talks really fast. He's really smart. And part of me thought that he would not live up to it in person, but it was like that and more. So he steals the show. I know this is not fair because most of you haven't seen the movie. He steals the show. He has one scene where he's the owner operator of the world's largest hot dog, and it's the highlight of the movie. And then there was a part two, of course, from Christina.
And the other part of the question is, how would you compare your comic making process to your animation process?
It's kind of the same, or it's probably kind of been informed a lot because the way I made comics was um a little bit different, I think, from how a lot of other people made comics when I was doing 3D comics, because I was thinking about it almost more like I was shooting a TV show where I would write a script for a comic, and then I would build the scene where the comic takes place, and then I would move the camera around in 3D to kind of find the panels as opposed to sketching it out and then executing on those sketches. So in that sense, I always did feel like when I was making those comics, especially for Vice, I felt like I was making a little TV show. Um, I started way back in college. I worked on a late night like public access talk show, and I really liked doing the three camera setup. I really liked the idea of having the action just in a scene occur, and then choosing what the camera moves are going to be later. And that's followed through. I don't know if that even makes any sense to anyone who's not really well versed in this stuff, but uh, that sort of way of just like having things happen and then figuring out where the camera is going to be later follows through comics and video games and animation for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, historically, like the making comics the traditional way of like ruling out your panel borders and so on a sheet of Bristol board, comics can be very, very hard to edit. You know, often people need to just kind of like redraw something and paste it down or something like that. So whereas, you know, what you're talking about is something where you can actually like, you know, just put some elements in place and then, you know, see what angles work best. Which is you know you're kind of creating that 3D environment, yeah, and then choosing essentially like what the perspective is and what the panel composition is once you've kind of built the environment. I mean, it's I guess it would be you know the equivalent to just like building a diorama and making a photocopy
Yes,
out of it or
it's
something
way
like
closer to that than it is to drawing out a
that.
classic cartoon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Anyone else want to chime in? One question I'll ask, just a kind of general one. What are you working on right now? If it's not NDA'd up or whatever,
No, I'm trying to think about
or
how
if
to
it's
answer
fragile and you're
that.
protecting it, you know, like you're nurturing your
I
creative.
am I am nurturing. I will say I
Mm.
did not realize how much work was going to come with this feature film after it was done.
Yeah.
I will say we're getting ready for our theatrical release. It hasn't been
Okay.
announced yet, so I won't say anything more than that, but my days today now are like cutting a lot of trailers and making marketing materials for that. And I kind of like it because it's like its own kind of project.
Mhm.
Uh I also just bought a house and I'm renovating it, which is like it actually sucks. It's actually so much work, but it's kind of fun and it's tickling a different kind of my part of my brain and I'm learning a lot of new stuff. And then at night, I'm trying to put down 2 pages a night on a new feature film for the
Mhm.
screenplay. So check back in 5 years on that one. It's not coming
Mhm.
anytime soon.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, and that I was also curious to know if the film was still doing festival circuits or if you had any other plans for it or any.
I'm going to Cleveland on Thursday for that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna probably do a full year or more at festivals, which is so fucking cool, like really unexpected. And it's been, yeah, it's been kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, also too, I mean, one of the things that came through in the presentation is the kind of distasteful economics that accompany, you know, the life of a creative professional. Like what I don't know, like what do you now that you're kind of so immersed in it, what do you think about that whole world of like how film gets out there? I mean, it kind of seems like you set yourself with this experiment of like, can I just do like a DIY feature? Like how I don't know, just how do you see the result of that now that it's sort of worked? Like you have made this kind of like homegrown movie and it's
Yeah.
going out to festivals, and as you say, you know, you can't talk about it, but there's going to be a theatrical release. Like, what do you think about that whole world of filmmaking and film distribution and so on, seeing it all from the inside?
No, it all sucks. You know, anything you have to do for money sucks. And it does make me miss the sort of transactionally evil nature of doing corporate illustration, where there's almost a level of honesty of, hey, we're a tech company. This is what we're going to give you, and this is what you're going to get, and it's going to happen on a 2 month timeline. Um, yeah, a lot of stuff that happens in the film world is it's just weird to me. Uh, it doesn't make any sense, and it's the parallels that I'm finding are that artists are expected to do their stuff for free.
Mhm.
That if something is successful, an artist is going to be the last person that makes money on it, even if it's their thing. Um, but I honestly don't know because I'm not. I've started taking meetings within the more traditional entertainment industry, but my best friend Payson and I just kind of did this as an experiment outside of that.
Hmm.
So I'm like worming my way around your question because I actually don't even know how I feel about it. You know, I'm still yeah, the film industry is everything that people say it is. You know, the stereotypes that you see in like Entourage are true.
Hmm.
Like everyone's like ob- obsessively chasing some form of success that's like really confusing.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, well, and also too, I guess, one of the kind of cliches about that industry is that like it's hard to get a hard no because everyone's just always being.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Is people say we love the movie so much, you're our favorite, we're passing on it. You know, that's
Hmm.
what drives me crazy because you will get a hard no in illustration. You
Hmm.
know, you will get honest feedback if something is not good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's the cliche that kind of drives me nuts. And I am a grown up. I understand that I have to participate in things that are not exactly how I want them to be.
Hmm.
And you may check in with me. I may come back here in another 6 years and be fully Hollywood. You
Yeah.
know, I might be really tan and like leathery and be like
Interesting. Yeah.
smoking a cigar Hollywood
Yeah.
style.
Yeah, yeah, cool. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it'll be different. It'll be another type of symposium talk. I mean, the choose your own adventure will be totally different. It'll be very interesting. There are a couple questions here. I'm guessing the answer is probably no, but someone asked, can you share any info about the new feature you're writing or the idea behind like a log line or anything like that? Totally understand if not. And
I'm
that's
gonna say no,
okay.
no.
All right.
However, wait, I kind of want to share maybe an idea that I threw away if I can think of a good one. Because I'll sometimes spend 3 or 4 days really locked in on something, and then like I'll kind of like wake up from it. So last week, I really wanted to start a company that made hammers. Uh, I thought of this whole like the brand and like the world, and like I even like went on Alibaba and started like sourcing hammers. So I have 10 hammers on the way to me, but I've already lost interest in it. I
Mhm.
wanted it to be like the Graza olive oil of hammers, like a cool hammer company.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's what I'm not actively working on right now.
That sounds like the kind of idea you come up with when you're rehabbing a house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. So,
Yeah.
and isn't that a great story for the
Yeah.
packaging, you know, or for
Yeah.
the TikTok?
Yeah. Well, and well, I mean, you've got Dopey using a pick on your shirt, which is similar to it
Bill,
also.
I just realized why you called me dopey earlier.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you were just
Oh no, sorry, I wasn't making fun of you. I was just
I was
referring to
like,
it.
yeah, I just took it like I accepted
Like,
it.
all right, this guy thinks I'm an idiot. That's fine. Yeah. No, no, no. I was just referring to Dopey on your shirt because it's cute. Okay.
I have two pet ducks named Sleepy and Sneezy. So
Hmm.
I thought maybe you were connecting that. I thought
Oh,
maybe we had talked
interesting.
about that and you were
Interesting.
connecting me to my ducks.
Got it. Okay, we got another question on the chat here. Maybe you already talked about this. This is from Dave, but Dave arrived a little late, saying regarding writing a script for animation, how do you approach it? Do you just write dialogue and ideas without drawing any kind of storyboard beforehand, etc.?
I'm not a boards guy. I can't like fully recommend doing it that way, but for me, the barrier to entry into a creative career was always that I couldn't draw. What I did while I was writing the movie is once I had a kind of a clear idea of what was happening in the scene, I would do a 3D model
Mm,
of the room that the scene was taking place in, and that would also give me a grounding sense of how it was going to go and give me ideas about, well, if these characters, if I'm looking at these characters and they're this far away from each other, maybe they're shouting at each other because of the distance, and maybe there's something that funny that comes out of that. You know, maybe there's some comedy about where they are in relation to each other, or there's something in the room that's funny.
mm. Actually, what you just said about rooms reminded me of something that I think I remember from your work. Didn't you have like a kind of series of gifts that were sort of like interiors or
This
spaces?
this is a great example of a road that I didn't end up really going down. I can't believe you
Mhm.
remember this, but
Yeah, we did
yeah,
like
I
a
was
talk like
doing.
10 years ago, and I was like very, or maybe a little less than that.
It was
And that was
probably the
like
one we
your,
did at the Strand,
maybe.
or but yeah, it was a. So I had this idea. I was doing 3D. I would go to people's houses, go to my friends' houses, and do sit in the room and do like a 3D model of the room while I was there. And what I wanted out of that was for rich people to invite me to their houses and pay me to do it. And it never took. So I think I probably did 6 or 7 of those, and then I ran out of friends, and then it didn't go into the upper echelons. So I'm fundraising right now for my next movie, so I'm willing to pick that one up if the price is right.
But what that did make me think was, regardless of that particular entrepreneurial project and its destiny, is that you are, I think, you're constructing rooms as a way of writing. You're building your own space. It makes me wonder if you're very just kind of sensitive to the ambiance of spaces, and that's something that maybe underlies some of your work. And that's an interesting part of your process, that you kind of construct a space almost as part of a writing process.
If you are trying to diagnose me with something right now,
No.
I'm not hearing it.
Okay.
I am not trying to get a diagnosis of anything, but I do understand what you're saying. I
Kind of put it all together.
when I was really learning 3D and when I was really actively like trying to improve on it every day, I would walk into a room and do it as an exercise where I would just like look around and like see what the shapes were in my head. Like this room is kind of a great one because I have this big wall of cubes, but that's kind of, I think everyone kind of has some element of their job that they can't help but do, like wherever they are. I don't know
Mhm.
if you have something like that, like if there's some element of comics curation that
Just
kind of
overanalyzing everything, like your
you're
room.
like on the
What's
subway
up
like
with you
reading
in
everything as a
rooms?
text.
Yeah. So
That's a pretty useful thing to be just
yeah.
doing in your spare time, though.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's great.
No, you are honestly, Bill, you are like one of the most like thoughtful, deep people I know, and it's always just like I'm always so interested in what you have to say. I'm so glad that we got to just catch up some other time. I know we've
Thank
chatted
you.
here and there over the years, but I just love hearing what you have to say always.
Oh, I appreciate that, because it's like sometimes like we haven't spent a lot of time together. Sometimes you just meet certain people where you're just you like the creative work, and then you meet the person and you're like, that person's really got the spark of life in them, and that's how I feel about you, Julian. So I feel, yes. So um any other questions? Last chance, last chance. Let's see. Okay, here's Bob Sikoriak. Um Bob says, I might have missed this. Was the hammer idea you mentioned for a character in your movie, or were you actually interested in making physical hammers?
I actually wanted to make hammers, and
Mhm.
I thought that somehow it could be like I was like on this, like all in on this huge document of ideas over the course of about 4 days. I thought it'd be fun to make a beautiful hammer, and then like also like build a world around it where it's like maybe it's like Bazooka Joe comics where each hammer comes with a comic and the hammer is a character, or like it's about a there's like a dopey mascot, which that is also very trendy right now. You're seeing a resurgence of mascots, but no, the hammer idea was a product, and oftentimes I'll have these ideas where because I'm so far outside what it is, I'm like, this is going to be the thing that makes me rich.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't think it's going to be hammers, but I don't think anyone has the market cornered. You know,
Well, yeah, especially when like you work, I think, like, thinking myself too. I mean, I definitely have like ideated a lot of, like harebrained ideas, or whatever, or maybe not, but or maybe unrealized, $1 million ideas. Who can say?
well,
But
that's the thing. Who can say?
yeah.
Because here's the thing about the hammers. If it is not $1 million idea, if it's a $0 idea or potentially a -$1 idea,
Mhm.
that's very bad. Versus
Mhm.
like, boys go to Jupiter. If that ends up being a $-dollar amount idea for me, it still was completely worth doing. And you
Yeah,
really
sure.
don't know that until you start playing with an idea and seeing it through. If you
But
actually want to do it, or if it's just you think it's going to make you rich.
right. Well, yeah, and definitely you should definitely always do it, even if you think it's going to be a failure. So I think that idea of
I think
risking
you have to
failure.
sort of you have to love it so much that the failure case does not scare you away from it.
Right, right. I mean, because ultimately it's like, I had a good, like, kind of like mentor figure one time when I was making like a big choice, And it was just kind of like at a certain point, the question is like, well, if there's no fear, what are you going to do? You know, and you kind of have to ask yourself that question and be able to put yourself mentally in the position of like, well, let's say okay, I have all these fears, but what if I didn't? What am I going to do? And it's like, well, then you should just do that. That's what you should
Yeah.
do, you know? So that's an important thing, I think, for people to embrace in many aspects of life. There's something else. Oh, but the other thing I was just going to say, kind of more prosaically about the hammer thing, is I think like, you know, especially like when you work with basically just like art all day, this like intangible stuff that doesn't have a practical purpose. When you have like one idea about like a physical thing, you're just like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Like people would actually use this, you
Well,
know?
that's the thing. Every single house in America needs one hammer or more, you
True,
know.
true.
Um, yeah, it's a common temptation. I'm not a physical world person at all. I
Mhm,
learn this every day that I try to do the electric in my house or whatever it
mhm,
is.
mhm,
I belong on the computer.
mhm. Okay, any other questions? Last call for questions for Julian. But no, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. I think that was a great the presentation you put together is great because we've talked about aesthetics, we've talked about practical career decision making, we've talked about your work, we've talked about the film, and you know, we've talked about Lyman, the essential ingredient
Kind of
that
a
makes
lot,
right.
yeah.
And so, you know, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm excited to know that you know, soon the whole world will have details on how it might have a chance to experience your animated feature film, Boys Go to Jupiter, which is still touring festivals. And in the meantime, you're working on your house and all of these other exciting projects. So thank you very much, Julian, for being here this week. And I just want to remind our audience that we still have several more weeks in this season of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium, and that next week's talk will be a conversation between Chris Cajero Silla with symposium co-curator Austin English. And then in coming weeks, we have Laura Park, Olivier Schrowen, Samantha Siegel, and Sarah Kirby, and Dan Nadel on his biography of Robert Crumb. So there's a lot more to look forward to. And once again, thanks, Julian, for being here tonight. And thanks, everyone, for joining
Thank
us for
you,
this
Bill,
really
and thank
great
you
talk.
everyone for participating.
Yeah, thank you for the great audience participation. This has been recorded in answer to that question. And that's actually a good cue for me to mention. All symposium presentations are recorded, and you know, unless the presenter wishes otherwise, can be viewed on our YouTube channel. So let me just put a quick link to that YouTube channel, hello, in the chat. Here it is. It's a very, very long URL, but there it is. So there's the YouTube channel, and you can see plenty of other editions of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium, and we will be posting this one in the near future before next week's talk with Chris Silla. All right, thanks again, Julia, and thanks again, everyone
Thank you, Bill,
else.
and
Have a great
everyone.
night. Bye-bye,
See you
everyone.
later.